morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining another episode of Retain, Grow, Thrive, Growave's podcast. I'm Joe Fox, your host and president at Growave. Today, I'm joined with some of my favorite friends in this space. I'm very lucky to have known Jason for an incredibly long time. I'm very lucky to have a lot to do with Andzen, and I'm very, very excited that Jeff has recently joined their team in the US. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on. Do you want to do a little bit of an introduction on yourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us on, Joe. Yeah, my name's Jason. I'm the CRO at Andzen. So we're a customer journey agency specializing in CRM and loyalty marketing. So essentially looking at your email, SMS, push notifications, any of those one-to-one journeys. And obviously when it comes to loyalty, how are we helping your loyalty program be a really cohesive part of your entire marketing strategy so that it builds community, but also it's like a native and really engaging part of the brand that your customers feel like they can engage with really well. And yeah, recently we've had Jeff join the team in North America.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Joe, for having us. My name, again, is Jeff. I'm the head of growth for North America at Andzen. My role here is to just connect with clients, connect with potential clients, make sure that they're getting the most value out of their CRM and email strategy, whether that's pulling in loyalty or whether that's a complete overhaul of the entire program. My job is to just make sure that everybody is well taken care of and brought into under the Andzen umbrella to really get the strongest customer journey, strongest CRM that they possibly can.
Love that, love that. And I mean, Jeff, we haven't had too many interactions, but I think the ones we have, I really love how you're super aligned with like Anzen's ethos of like really helping the customer on that. So I love that, and I'm looking forward to diving a bit more into that. And Jason and I are lucky to have sort of lived in the same town back in Australia, so
Yeah,
we've known each other for quite some time. Which
absolutely.
is awesome. And we've had, a few of these conversations. And
Yeah.
last time we caught up was Shop Talk, wasn't it? It was on your podcast.
Austin. No,
Oh,
we caught.
Austin. Yes, we did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
You took us
yeah.
out, actually, my first time kind of outside of Austin, going out to a smaller town and having real OG barbecue out of the
Oh
suburbs,
yeah.
which
Yeah.
was really nice. But yeah, we did. We obviously recorded one of these in at Shop Talk as well. So the Andzen approach, which is a podcast. So if there is anyone listening, obviously listen to the entirety of this episode, and then when you're done and you're thinking to yourself, "Man, I really want to hear more," you can hop on andzen.co/podcast. An episode with Joe and with Eldar as well, the founder. So that was a really great episode for us, with the first time having a founder on the pod of a software who could really talk to everything that, all the amazing stuff that you guys have built. So that was really great.
Amazing. Yeah, no, thank you for that. And Eldar and I are lucky we get to record, one of these every so often, and we're kind of doing our product updates and stuff through these now, which is cool. But
Great.
I'll
That's
make
awesome.
sure the Anzen Approach podcast link is in the show notes for everyone watching, because I think I really want to stress this, kind of before we get too deep and in for the audience. Anzen are the OG Klaviyo agency. Like you guys have been doing this for a very long time.
Yeah,
You know exactly what you're doing when it comes to this. So I really want to, focus on diving in a little bit of on that. I think
for sure.
majority of our audience is customers and merchants who are looking for providers to be able to help them in their journey. And I think, Klaviyo in particular is so important for that life cycle
Yeah.
journey. So in saying that, pardon the pun, but what is the Anzen approach, gentlemen? Like when you
Yeah,
have
of course.
when you have a merchant that comes to you and says, hey, you know, we think we know a little bit about this Klaviyo stuff. We think we know a little bit about this life cycle stuff. What is the typical approach, Jeff, that you and Jason kind of take, or what are the first steps in being able to assess, whether they're a good fit?
I think specifically it's assessing what's actually going on in there. A lot of the
Mm.
times merchants come in and they I want to call it landlocked to an extent, where it's going as good as it possibly could if you only had one set of eyes on it. And then typically they come to an agency and they go, I think it's going good. And we go in and we're like, yeah, this is great. This is great. But there's a lot of low hanging fruit because people get what I call landlocked. And so it becomes an eye opening experience when they come and talk to Andzen, specifically because we're going, yes, this is all fantastic, but you're missing one key element, or this key metric is suffering because of X, Y, and Z. So we're really in the game of eye opening, and we're really in
Yeah.
like, I mean, not that we're like psychics or anything to that extent. Yeah, I guess data driven approach would be a better or business term in terms of that. But I do think we're in the business of eye opening. We're in the business of kind of taking people down who are walking one path, like almost taking them off like the beaten trail and making sure that the end goal is still common. But sometimes it's a little faster to get there. Sometimes it's a little more strategic to get there. So pull us in and make sure that everything is going as smooth as you think it is.
I love
Yeah, I
that. I
think that's a
love
good
that.
point. Like, so usually the first place that we start is an audit of the account. And for partners, so if you're a merchant using Growave, we do our audits complimentary. They're normally $2,000, but for partners, we do them for free. And why we start with an audit is because, like Jeff said, oftentimes no one knows your brand better than you, right? And so we'll come in and we might look at your automation and say, hey, actually, your nurture series is already great. Like we look at Klaviyo's benchmarks, we look at how you're performing in your vertical, and we can tell you you're already in the top 70th or 80th percentile for with your welcome series. It's doing a great job. Maybe one or two things we might recommend, but that's fine. And then we might say, look at the post-purchase journey and say, hey, actually, this flow isn't performing to benchmark. Or, hey, like we noticed that the post-purchase flow, yeah, the conversion rate's okay, but you guys offer subscriptions and, there's not really anything. We can see a lot of the repeat orders are just for a single product and not really upgrading for subscription. So we're taking that, cutting a layer or two deeper and saying, based on the data, actually, there's something that we could do here. And then tying it back to the ROI, right? A lot of the times we might be able to say, hey, if you just change some of your timing, do an A/B test in that flow, you could go away and do that yourself. You don't really need to pay an agency to do that. But some of this more technical work, or maybe integrating some of your tech stack more effectively, that can, like Jeff said, really elevate things, which is a bit more technical. Bring us in, we can make that happen. And we've kind of got the data there to say, well, if we take the conversion rate from X to Y, then it's worth investing the money as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think, that's one thing that I think, one of the many things that I think y'all are doing different in the space is that it seems to me like a lot of agencies will go through this process where they just want to get the merchant kind of on a retainer, or they just want to
Yeah.
start working with the merchant. And I really like that approach where it's like, let's see, let's as Jeff said, let's open your eyes and let's see if we're a good fit and see what value we can add, and if it's something that you can potentially do yourselves, or if it's, as you said, more technical and there's more involved, we can jump in. And I really like that approach. I think that's unique, and I think that's, a testament to why you guys have done so well in the APAC region, and why you're having this growth in the US,
Yeah.
spearheaded by, you, Brendan, and Jeff, being
Yeah.
boots on the ground here. Um, yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so a couple of other things I wanted to talk about. Tell me a little bit more around the relationship that you have with Klaviyo, because,
Yeah.
we also have a lot of partners who watch this. I'm sure they're really striving to have that successful kind of relationship with, technology partners. I think,
Yeah, of course.
once again, Anzen really leads the way with what you've done with Klaviyo. I saw that amazing event that Pip spoke at
Yeah,
KSID.
K-Sid. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about, how you've developed that relationship.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, like you said, we've been doing this for a very long time, which helps. So we have been around since 2012, and we first partnered with Klaviyo in 2016, which was actually a really great time to become a Klaviyo partner, because Klaviyo at that time had just kind of re-released their Flow editor to be essentially the kind of V1 of what it is today. That more drag and drop and really dynamic in terms of how you could build out journeys. And so you mentioned there being in APAC. So we were originally founded in Australia, and for the first couple of years there, I would say between sort of 2016 and 2019, when we were working with Klaviyo, we were pretty isolated in APAC. We really only worked with merchants here. And we quite literally one day got a phone call, and it was someone saying, "Hey, we're from Klaviyo. You guys have generated a lot of business for us, and no one here knows who any of you are. We should probably have a proper formal partnership," which we weren't really used to. Like being in APAC, we didn't really get a lot of attention from American software platforms. We were just kind of literally on an island doing our thing. So that was how things got started. But then as the sort of ball started rolling, we became really intentional about what we were doing with Klaviyo. So we met with our partner manager. We very quickly, once we got assigned a partner manager, we set up a monthly cadence, and we kind of had those conversations with Klaviyo to say, well, what is it that you need from us? Like, what are your expectations around us in this market? How are we, not necessarily just how can we help you, but like the symbiotic relationship here, right? How can we make the most of your platform for your merchants? And that obviously helps us too. And that was kind of the genesis of it. We became really proactive. We really wanted to get a good understanding of the product roadmap, of what features were coming out, because we wanted to be able to have those conversations with merchants to say, even if there was something that wasn't there today, it might be coming, or really, how can we kind of stretch this platform to its limits and kind of squeeze any extra juice out of what we were doing? And so that, I think the combination of maybe inquisitiveness, but also really strategic thinking, like wanting to do more, not necessarily being satisfied with saying, well, we have a split test for 30 minutes versus an hour on this flow, that's good enough, but wanting to dig into the data more and understand things. That obviously excites Klaviyo, right? Or any platform. If we came to you guys and we're talking about the same thing in loyalty or reviews and wish lists, you guys are obviously going to be excited and feel like we're really engaged. So that was really a key piece for us. And we started, we actually in 2019, we went to KBOS, which is the Boston version of that K-Sit event that you mentioned. And it was funny, Brendan and I went out there thinking, we're going to go and we're going to see people speaking, we're going to get all these great ideas, and we're going to see the kind of cutting edge strategy in America that people are using. We're going to be able to bring that home. And we were really surprised to find that actually what we were doing was already really advanced. And we quite literally got on the plane to come home and said, all right, we're going to open an American office. And January 2020, that was it. We opened it, and we've been, America is basically half of our business now, is our American office.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you've got such a very good person in Jeff kind of leading that, which I think is awesome too. And, being able to expand like that based upon the pure talent and the pure results that you've driven for merchants is something that's pretty outstanding. So I think you should definitely give yourself a pat on the back for that. I think, it often happens the other way, particularly from a software side of things, right? Like you have a software company that's doing really well in the US and they say, hey, we got to push to other regions to support it. But I think, it's a very cool story being able to say, hey, we went the other way because we're so good at this, offering that we provide. So, and these services that we deliver. So I love that. And, obviously, we're speaking about it earlier in terms of how much we travel and all of those sorts of things. Do you feel that the next step will kind of be like, obviously, the US is a big focus at the moment, but do you see a logical progression to go UK? I know Brendan has some roots there and stuff. UK, wider Europe. Is that kind of like your plans?
Yeah, Brendan and I both lived in the UK previously, and actually the way that Brendan and I met was working for in English email and SMS software. So
Sorry, I
he
didn't know
actually,
that you
yeah,
had the roots there too. Yeah.
yeah. So he hired me actually to work for the platform was called Sign Up Too. It was eventually
Hmm.
acquired by GoDaddy and then Sunset. So yeah, that was how Brendan and I first worked together. He hired me, and we were selling software, email and SMS software, and that was back in 2012, which feels like a scary thing to say
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
2025. But yeah, very much so. We do actually have quite a few clients in the UK. We work with some pretty heritage brands over there, which we're quite proud of. But for right now, I think North America, we have a team in North America, we have a team in APAC. We can obviously facilitate our UK clients through that North American team, but for us, America is full of opportunity, really. And we talk about this often, but the Australian market is a very small market, right? We have, I think, 25, 26 million people in the
Hmm.
entire country, right? And it's, we're obviously a fairly, by like global standards, fairly wealthy market. We have a really strong retail sector. But ultimately, it's you have to be a really strong brand. You have to be a really competitive offering to grow and thrive in the
Mm.
Australian market.
Yeah.
And I think that actually is a lot of our competitive edge. We work with brands here in, whether it's fashion or health and supplements or pet supplies. We work with merchants in that space, and they have to be really strategic. They have to be really thoughtful about how they run their business to be successful in a market that's frankly smaller than some cities in America, let alone states.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I feel that we bring a lot of that tenacity, a lot of that strategic thinking to our clients in America. And that is really, I think, a big part of our edge. We're interested in what are your margins? What should we be doing to grow your average order value? How can we sustainably and strategically create growth without just saying, oh, well, we'll just put a discount in there if they haven't converted, or whatever, kind of cheap and easy strategy it is. And I think it's a similar thing for Jeff. Jeff is actually north of the border in America. And yeah, again, like, you've worked with a lot of brands in Canada as well that are in a similar situation, right? The market isn't as big and they need to be a little bit more thoughtful and strategic about how they work.
Yeah, Canadian brands, it's small but tight competition. Because again, the similar population to Australia. If you're saying 20 to 25 million, we do have a large country, but we're so congested into certain spots, and so
Yeah.
these great ideas come from brands, and then all of a sudden they think they're just at like the top of their game, and then someone's just trailing behind them, and so it's a consistent, like, you can never really sit still in this
Yeah.
market, or you're gonna fall so far behind so quickly before you even wake up the next day. So I mean, it echoes the Australian market is very, very similar to the Canadian market in the sense where it's like we have these heritage brands that stick around forever, and by forever I mean sometimes 500-600 years, and then randomly they just fail to catch up. Like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Hudson's Bay Company.
Mm.
This company that's been around since the inception of Canada. They were fur traders, and then after we stopped trading fur like that, they like a brick and mortar store that you would see at every mall. Then they tried to pivot to e-commerce, and they just fell so flat on their face that the entire company, a heritage company in Canada, is completely shuttered, completely closed. And so
Mm.
very, very volatile here, and people don't expect that because they expect us to be these nice guys that are holding doors and keeping everybody's businesses open, and it's really not the case around here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's well, sad to hear about that brand. I mean, it's always sad when you hear about
Yeah.
heritage brands, but I think, it reinforces the sentiment that we're talking about in this podcast. Like, you need to be growing, you need to be thriving, you need to be retaining, and you need to be adapting to the market. So that certainly makes a lot of sense. And Jeff, tell me a little bit more about, obviously I love to hear this from you because I know you're out front leading the charge, particularly talking to merchants on a very regular basis. Um, Tell me a little bit more about what you're seeing in this current market, like in North America. Like, I've had these conversations, quite a bit, and I'm getting good little insights from everyone that I think it'd be really useful for the audience is, you know, do you think this tariff situation is as bad as everyone thinks it is? Are you hearing that a lot from prospective merchants at the moment?
I think the there's obviously a very looming situation with the tariffs right now, but I think if people are switching their mindset to more of a retention mindset and acquisition in the meantime, I think right now playing the long game is really important. A lot of merchants have shifted focus to like immediate value for their customers to acquisition strategies because they can keep their customers by their side through the entire situation, and add a bit of humanity to it. I think
Yeah.
that's what a lot of people are lacking right
Mm.
now. I have no call outs on that, but I think there's humanity to be had in a situation like this where everybody kind of needs to hold each other's hand and uplift each other. And so I think the brands that are switching to a more personable strategy, of more, hey, we're all in this together strategy, let's just stick around on the list, we'll nurture you, we'll do X, Y, and Z with you. I think those are the brands that are going to come out on top here. In terms of the market itself, I don't see any stagnation. I do see people are still willing to invest in their marketing strategies, willing to invest in their brands. So I want to call it like half in, half out for the most part. The brands that are
Yep.
willing to invest and stick around are changing their strategies up, and the brands that aren't willing to change their strategy up, unfortunately, are probably going to be the ones that are left in the dust here.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that's an incredibly good insights. I think from a SaaS side, I mean, for us, we're, you know, I don't wish bad on anyone, but I think we're finding that a lot of through this is that a lot of merchants, a lot of our agency partners are kind of using this as a time to say, hey, let's reduce some overhead. Let's look at your
Yeah.
tech stack. Let's consolidate a little bit. Let's do some cost saving exercises as opposed to rolling out like, even more ad spend and all of those sorts of things. So it's an interesting time for that. But I think you're 100% right. I think playing the long game here really is key, Jeff. And I think being I think the human element though, like the being human thing, I hope that continues a little bit more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
I think that's a really nice touch when brands are a bit more humane and a bit more open and real. And I hope that continues. I like that.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's an interesting time, I think, to be in commerce at the end of the day, and to be in retail in particular. So it is a time, I think, times like this breed innovation to a degree as well. And so you have to
Absolutely.
be strategic and you have to be really thoughtful about the marketing that we're doing. But I think, we need to have empathy as well. And, as service providers, both of us, we need to be empathetic to the situation our merchants are into and how can we support them to make the most of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think the other thing I'd love to just kind of, dive into on this call, I know we're going to do, some follow-up podcasts and everything, particularly granted how close our partnership is. I'd love to just maybe, Jason, this might be one for you in particular, or Jeff, if you want to chime in on this. Um, can you give a recent example of just like a merchant who came to you who was not in a good way? We dove in a little bit around the audits, but I'd love to kind of just talk about the time frames of things afterwards
Yeah.
and a little bit of the process and what happens after you've gone through that audit process.
Yeah, for sure. So I think a good example, we recently have started working with a smaller chain of essentially a DIY store, but
Yeah,
specifically for electrical. So they work with, they service electricians, but they also service your kind of weekend warrior. I don't know if that's the same similar term that people use in America, but basically
yeah,
your DIY kind of hero.
yeah,
Um, so we initially we had a conversation with them, and it was purely around SMS, and they were looking to move some SMS over from one platform to another. And we just said to them, hey, like while we're there looking at the data, why don't we just do the audit and we can have a look at any other opportunities? And it was an interesting conversation because it very much started with, well, look, you could do the order, but you're probably just wasting your time. We're very confident that everything that we do is really strong. We've really been thoughtful about how we do it. But we persisted. We did the audit. We presented the findings back to the full marketing team. And, basically they admitted they were surprised by how much they didn't know and how much opportunity there was available.
Wow.
And what that led to was this initial project where we were helping them with a couple of things turned into, actually, could you do some consulting for our team? And their team is still doing the implementation and kind of rolling things out and managing things. But like Jeff said, it was just kind of an eye-opening experience to sit there and say, like, oh, actually, you know what? We hadn't really thought about integrating this app and what that might mean for our abandoned cart flow if we were to show, how many reviews this product has and how many stars it has. Or, in the nurture series, we aren't really speaking to qualified electrician and tradesmen differently to those weekend warriors, and we probably should be. There probably is a bit of context around, if you're a tradesman, you get tax back and things like that, and all those good things of being a business buying versus a retail customer. So I think that's a really good example of, that this was a brand that has been around for 50 years and they've got a marketing team and they're very, very confident in what they're doing. But at the end of the day, they're also looking after their social ads. They're looking at their SEO, they're developing their website, they're looking at their merchandising strategy and their product pricing strategy. And it's very difficult for any internal team to be doing that and then going really, really deep in their entire tech stack and,
Yes.
tinkering with every single tool and seeing how it works. So yeah, I think, there's often opportunity there to bring someone in who has maybe a bit of that specialist insight that can just uncover a couple of opportunities. And at the end of the day, it might just be 10% here and 5% there and 6% there. Well, now we've got, 15% more revenue at the end of the quarter or the end of the half year. That's really impactful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, I talk about this every episode, but I think it's like you need the right experts. If you're a merchant and you're trying to do everything yourself, obviously there's a point where that becomes completely unsustainable and you're going to go backwards from doing so. And I think, I cannot stress that enough. If you're a merchant watching this, like, having the right advisors, having the teams that have worked with thousands of different brands across all different verticals, guiding you and helping you,
Yeah.
you can't lose if you do things that way. So I really love to hear that. I'm sure offline you can tell me the name of the brand. I think I may have a rough idea. May have a rough idea,
Yeah,
but
maybe.
um, that's awesome. Cool. So. Um, One thing I always like to sort of ask all of our guests on this is you've mentioned that there's the opportunity for an audit and everything like that. I'll
Yep.
make sure the link and everything's here. I really implore people to take advantage of that and get in contact with this team. They are amazing, and if they work with you, they will absolutely deliver. I can attest to that. We have some shared merchants who provided that feedback, and I've known Anzen
Great.
for a very long time across a lot of different
Yeah.
roles, and you guys consistently stand out as being, top of the tree. So hats off to
Mm.
that. But a bit more of I guess, a question on practicality, because we all travel so much. Like Jason and I couldn't work out if it was Austin or Vegas where we caught up
Yeah,
last.
yeah.
And Jeff, I know you travel quite a bit too. Um, what Gentlemen, what are the things, or what is the one thing, and you can't say a person, that you
Mhm.
cannot live without? So whether you're at home or you're traveling, what's something that is always coming with you?
I mean, it's easy to say fast. So I'll try and give an answer that's a bit more meaningful. I listen to a lot of music. That's probably outside of work, or even actually while I work, I listen to a lot of music. So um, very, very, I'm one of those people that spends like $1,000 on a pair of headphones. So a little travel set of in-ear headphones and a little amp that I can plug into my phone so that if I'm on a plane or whatever it is, I can listen to music in really high fidelity. And yeah, I don't think I could travel without.
Love that. Love that.
I was gonna say something music related too, but I'm not to piggyback on Jason. So
Jeff and I completely over the size of our book collection.
if I turn
So
around right now,
yeah, I'm getting quick with that.
if I turn around right now, I'm looking at like a good $10,000 worth of vinyls and vinyl accessories. Like,
Nice.
but
Cool.
Nice.
not to echo Jason, I'm big into retro gaming, so I have this little handheld, looks like a Game Boy thing. I love bringing that on the plane. I can spend countless hours getting locked in like Galaga, Mario, the whole nine. So sometimes I
Nice.
bring this on a plane. It feels like I teleport. I look up and I'm like, oh, I'm here. So that's
Yeah,
my answer.
that's good. That makes both of those activities make travel go quick. That's awesome. I got to dig in there on both of those really quickly. So, Jeff, is it retro gaming only, or do you play
I'm
some modern games?
I'm big into gaming as a whole, but the retro gaming is good for travel because if you catch me trying to play Fortnite at an airport, probably get kicked out.
You're like, aren't you globally ranked in Dead or Alive?
Oh yeah, I do play a
Oh,
fighting game.
wow.
There you go.
That's a deep dark secret for the Growave podcast, I suppose. Yes, I do
Yeah.
play a fighting game called Dead or Alive. I am 10th in the world on the Xbox servers.
Wow.
So
Fantastic.
I've put a considerable amount of time into that, but I put more time into e-commerce and auditing and the whole nine.
No, that's fantastic. Congratulations on that. That's not a small feat. I know that's a very big community with a lot of players, so that's awesome.
Playing it for like 10, 15 years, again, considerable amount of time on there.
Nice. No, that's fantastic. And gentlemen, both on that note, because the music thing is obviously big to both of you. Is there a particular artist that you're listening to a lot of at the moment, or something that stands out when I ask that question?
Right now, I'm
I've
really
been enjoying Shaboy's album. It's quite good.
Yeah.
Who else? What's Alligator? What Dochi? Dochi's album, the new
Okay.
album is really good as well.
Okay. Okay. Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
What's yours, Jeff?
I'm really big into like 80s rock right now, so I'm a huge Depeche Mode fan, which again,
Nice.
exposing myself left, right, and center on the Growave podcast. But yeah, big Depeche Mode fan. I've recently reintroduced myself to the Cranberries as well. So I'm just kind of running down that line right now. But you could find me at any concert if you need to. You need to talk e-commerce. You can come to any concert in Southwestern Ontario or Detroit. You probably find me in the pit in some manner.
Nice. Nice. I love that. Yeah, I feel like 80s rock is definitely having a bit of a resurgence through like movie soundtracks at the moment. I noticed
Yeah.
that like I'm a big movie buff, and I feel like movies always go through certain swings of genres of music, and I feel like the 80s rock stuff's having a huge sort of a comeback at the moment, which is cool. But appreciate that. I'll hit you both up for some playlists at some point.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on. As I said, really, really respect all of the work that you and the team are doing at Andzen. I think it's a real testament to building those long-standing partnerships with Klaviyo, being the best of the best, never feeling like you can stand still and continuing to improve and grow. We really value your partnership. I know the audience would have got a lot of value out of today. I'll make sure all of those links are included below. But thank you both
For
so
sure.
much for coming on, and I'm sure we'll see each other in some corner of the globe very shortly.
Yes, absolutely.
And I really appreciate it. So thank you both.
Awesome, thanks, Joe.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of Retain, Grow, Thrive. The Anzan team are fantastic. Obviously, you saw Jason and Jeff just now, but episode with Brendan will be coming out soon. We really value the partnership with those guys. They're absolute experts in the Klaviyo field. Very humble, but I think they are the number one Klaviyo agency in the world and have been for some time. So please be sure to follow them on LinkedIn, connect with them. Everything's in the show notes. Go check out their podcast. Highly recommend it. They were part of the inspiration for us putting this podcast together, and their content is second to none. So yeah, thank you all so much for joining. I'll see you again soon. Cheers.